In the desert outside Yanbu, on the Red Sea coast of Saudi Arabia, the trucks of the Dakar Rally lined up once again for the start of the world's hardest race, engines idling, dust already rising before the first kilometer had even been driven. But for the fourth year in a row, one name was missing from that starting grid, a name that had won more of these brutal crossings than any other manufacturer in the history of the event, a team so dominant that rivals had spent 3 decades simply trying to survive its shadow. How does a machine that conquered minefields, sandstorms, and its own catastrophic failures, a machine built to outlast anything the desert could throw at it, get stopped not by sand, but by a war thousands of kilometers away from any dune it had ever crossed? The team in question is KAMAZ Master, the factory rally raid outfit from Naberezhny Chelny, a city in the Tatarstan region of Russia built almost entirely around a single truck manufacturer. 19 victories in the Dakar Rally's truck category, spread across more than 3 decades, make it statistically the most successful team the event has ever produced, in any category, on any type of machine. To understand how a truck factory from behind the Iron Curtain became the benchmark that Mercedes, MAN, Iveco, Tatra, and DAF all had to measure themselves against, you have to go back to a moment when none of that dominance seemed even remotely possible. The story begins in the mid-1980s, inside the technical center of the KAMA automobile plant, where an engineer named Semyon Yakubov ran the research division and quietly believed that motorsport could push the factory's trucks further than any laboratory ever would. The Soviet Union was entering its final chaotic years. State budgets for anything resembling entertainment were disappearing, and the idea of sending a Russian truck across the Sahara to compete against European manufacturers with vastly larger budgets sounded, to most of the plant's leadership, like an indulgence the country could not afford. Yakubov went looking for money anyway, and found it in an unlikely place: a private commercial company willing to gamble on an idea nobody else believed in. That sponsor's name was Master, and it is the reason the team still carries the name KAMAZ Master today. With that funding, the factory built its first purpose-modified racing trucks and, according to the team's own account, entered the Paris-Dakar Marathon for the first time around 1990, competing on trucks still close to their production routes rather than the exotic lightweight monsters some rivals were fielding. That distinction mattered more than it seemed at the time, because the category of extreme modified trucks was about to be nearly wiped out entirely for reasons that had nothing to do with KAMAZ. 2 years before the Russians arrived, a Dutch team running the DAF 95 X2 Turbo Twin, one of the fastest and most radical racing trucks ever built, suffered a catastrophic accident during a stage in Niger. The truck rolled repeatedly at high speed after launching off a dune crest, and the impact killed the vehicle's engineer, who was thrown from the cabin. The tragedy forced organizers to ban that entire class of ultra-modified prototype trucks for nearly a decade, and when the category eventually returned, it came back under far stricter rules that favored trucks closer to real, sellable machines. KAMAZ, building on production platforms almost by necessity, was perfectly positioned for the world that emerged from that tragedy, a world that rewarded resilience over raw, uncontrolled speed. The team's first real trial by fire came in the early 1990s, when a battered, half-functioning corridor through the Sahara doubled as both a race route and an active ceasefire line between Morocco and Mauritania, 2 countries technically still at war. During one edition, an engine failure left one of the KAMAZ crews stranded near that fragile boundary, forced into an impossible choice: abandon a truck that would almost certainly be stripped for parts by the time anyone returned, or risk stepping outside the narrow, mine-cleared corridor to try to save it. The exact details of how close that decision came to disaster vary depending on who tells the story within the team today, but the moment became part of KAMAZ's internal mythology, a symbol of exactly what this race demanded of the people who competed in it. None of that risk meant anything competitively until 1996, when driver Viktor Moskovskikh delivered KAMAZ its first Dakar victory in the truck category, breaking through against rivals with budgets many times the size of the Russian program. It was not raw power that got them there. A KAMAZ engineer had chosen a Yaroslavl-built turbo diesel over more powerful imported alternatives, specifically because it tolerated low-grade fuel and low engine speeds better, a decision that seems almost boringly practical until you remember that a truck stranded 1,000 kilometers from the nearest fuel station with contaminated diesel in its tank is a truck that loses the race, regardless of how many horsepower its spec sheet claims. That lesson about restraint over raw numbers was reinforced 2 years later in the most expensive way possible. For the 1998 Dakar, KAMAZ engineers fitted their mid-engined prototype with a 12-cylinder unit producing over 1,000 horsepower, a genuinely enormous figure for the era, expecting it to be a decisive advantage. Instead, the transmission simply could not handle the torque being fed into it, and the truck that was supposed to announce a new era of Russian dominance limped through the race instead. It was, in hindsight, the last time KAMAZ placed its engine in the middle of the chassis at all, because new competition rules arriving shortly after forced every manufacturer toward front-engined, more production-representative layouts. The driver who turned KAMAZ from a promising underdog into the sport's dominant force was Vladimir Chagin, a Perm-born racer who would eventually win the truck category 7 times, more than any other driver in Dakar history, earning him the nickname Tsar of the Desert among rivals and fans alike. Chagin's trucks during this period weighed close to 9 or 10 tons fully loaded, ran turbo diesel engines in the 12 to 13-liter range, and relied on suspension travel measured in hundreds of millimeters to absorb impacts that would shatter a conventional highway truck's axles within minutes. Between 2002 and 2006, Chagin and his teammates won 5 consecutive editions, a streak built less on any single technological leap than on an obsession with reliability that the team's rivals, often assembling trucks from a patchwork of outside suppliers, simply could not match. Part of that reliability came from something structurally unusual in international motorsport. Every KAMAZ master driver, navigator, and mechanic is drawn from inside the KAMAZ factory itself, people who build production trucks on weekdays and race-modified versions of the same machines on weekends and holidays. Rival programs typically hired professional racing drivers and outsourced fabrication to specialist motorsport workshops across Europe. KAMAZ instead built an entire closed ecosystem, meaning the person driving the truck across a dune at 100 kilometers an hour often understood exactly why every bolt in that chassis had been placed where it was, because they had likely tightened some of those very bolts themselves on the factory floor months earlier. When the Dakar itself was forced to abandon its African route in 2008 after credible terrorist threats in Mauritania, and the race relocated entirely to South America the following year, it created the first real geopolitical rupture in the event's history, one that hinted at how fragile this sport's relationship with world politics could be. KAMAZ adapted without missing a step, with Chagin winning in 2009 and again in 2010 and 2011 across the dunes of Argentina and Chile and the punishing altitude of the Atacama Desert, proving that the team's engineering philosophy translated across continents just as effectively as it had across the Sahara. The technology underneath the trucks kept evolving through this period in ways that rarely made headlines outside the sport, but mattered enormously on the ground. Engine partnerships shifted from in-house Yaroslavl units toward imported components, at various points including American Cummins Power, and eventually a long-running collaboration with the German industrial manufacturer Liebherr, whose 6-cylinder inline turbodiesel became the backbone of KAMAZ's modern racing engines. None of these choices were about chasing the biggest number on a spec sheet, since the 1998 gearbox failure had already taught the team what happens when raw output outruns the rest of the machine. fuel tanks grew toward 1,000 liters, not for outright speed, but because a truck that can drive an entire marathon stage without refueling support removes an entire category of catastrophic risk in the middle of nowhere. Tire pressure regulation systems allowed drivers to soften tires on the move for deep sand and firm them instantly for rocky terrain, a detail almost invisible on camera, but often the difference between a truck that floats over a dune face and one that digs itself into a grave of its own sand. Dominance was interrupted in 2016 when Kamaz arrived at the Dakar with an all-new, long-bonneted truck still not fully ready for competition, forcing the team to fall back on its aging cab-over-engine trucks instead. Dutch veteran Gerard de Rooij, driving for Iveco, seized the opening and won the category outright, the first time in more than a decade that the truck crown had left Russian hands. It was a reminder that even the most dominant engineering program in the sport's history could be beaten the moment it tried to rush an unfinished idea into the world's most unforgiving proving ground. Kamaz answered in 2017 with that same new truck, finally race-ready, a bonneted design nicknamed Kapotnik internally, which moved the cab back behind a proper hood rather than sitting directly above the front axle. That shift improved weight distribution across the front suspension, reduced the violent pitching drivers experienced launching off dune crests, and gave engineers more room to manage cooling for an engine now pushing toward 1,000 horsepower. Eduard Nikolaev drove it to victory that year, restarting a run of consecutive Kamaz wins that would stretch from 2017 through 2022. That same period introduced the K5 generation truck, built around a roughly 13-liter six-cylinder turbo diesel producing somewhere in the range of 1,100 horsepower, mated to an automatic transmission and aluminum wheels running a tire pressure system that had by then become standard across the entire field. By January 2022, Kamaz Master looked untouchable, sweeping the truck podium that year with Dmitry Sotnikov taking the win ahead of teammates Nikolaev and Andrei Karginov. It was, statistically, the peak of the team's history, and also, almost to the week, the last moment before everything the team had spent 30 years building started to unravel for reasons that had nothing to do with engineering. 1 month later, Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and the consequences reached the Dakar Rally faster than almost anyone in the sport expected. International federations moved to bar Russian and Belarusian athletes from competition entirely, and the FIA eventually offered a narrow path back. Russian and Belarusian competitors could keep racing only if they signed a formal commitment condemning the invasion and agreed to compete without their national flags or colors. For most individual athletes across other sports, that was an uncomfortable but survivable compromise. For Kamaz, it was structurally impossible to accept. Kamaz is not simply a truck brand that happens to sponsor a racing team. Its parent company sits partly under Rostec, the Russian state defense conglomerate, and its factories produce armored personnel carriers and military transport vehicles that were already being deployed in the war, the FIA document demanded the team condemn. Signing that declaration would have meant a state-linked manufacturer publicly denouncing the very government whose military relied on its own production lines. In late 2022, Kamaz Master formally announced it would not sign, ending the Dakar's longest and most decorated truck dynasty at what should have been the height of its power. The vacuum left behind was filled almost immediately by Iveco, whose de Rooij-linked programs swept the truck standings at the 2023 Dakar and have effectively owned the category in every edition since, with Czech driver Martin Masek winning in both 2024 and 2025, and the de Rooij FPT squad topping the podium again in 2026. Journalists and rival drivers alike have noted a strange side effect of Kamaz's absence. Even competitors who spent decades trying to beat the Russians admit the category feels less complete without a rival capable of pushing them to their limit, the way a boxer misses the one opponent who always forced them to fight better than they thought they could. Behind the scenes, the sanctions imposed on Russia hit KAMAZ's racing program in ways that went far beyond simply missing a start line. Engines had been sourced in part from China, transmissions from Germany, shock absorbers from the Netherlands, and much of that supply chain evaporated within months of the invasion. The team was forced to bring far more production in-house, a slower and costlier process than buying proven components from specialist foreign suppliers, and reportedly sold off some of its own championship-winning trucks to offset the sudden loss of longtime sponsor Red Bull, with the state energy giant Gazprom stepping in as a replacement backer. The factory that once built its reputation on reliability born from decades of refinement was, for the first time in its history, forced to relearn parts of its own engineering supply chain, almost from scratch. What makes this moment genuinely uncertain, rather than simply tragic, is that neither side of the standoff appears eager for it to be permanent. Team principals have said publicly that European contacts within the sport have quietly signaled they would welcome KAMAZ back, and the team has continued behaving as though a return is only a matter of time, running full training camps in the Gobi Desert through 2025 and into 2026, developing new young drivers through its own factory academy, and continuing to compete in events still open to it, including a first-place finish at the Silkway Rally as recently as 2025. Whether a resolution to the war in Ukraine or some future diplomatic shift within the FIA ever reopens, that door remains genuinely unresolved as of the most recent Dakar Rally, held in January 2026, which finished once again without a single KAMAZ truck on the entry list. There is something almost unbearably fitting about a machine forged in the tension between ambition and survival. A truck whose earliest legendary moment involved a crew choosing whether to risk stepping outside a ceasefire corridor between two warring nations to save their vehicle, now sitting parked at home because of a different war on a different continent. The front line that once threatened to end a single cruise race in the 1990s has been replaced by a front line that has ended, for now, the entire team's presence in the sport it once defined more completely than any other manufacturer in Dakar history. Whatever happens next, the record already stands, permanent and almost certainly unbeatable in the near term. 19 truck category victories, a driver who became known as the Tsar of the Desert, an engineering culture built entirely from people who assembled their own machines on a factory floor before racing them across two continents, and a legacy that outlasted the Soviet Union that gave birth to it. The trucks themselves, some retired to museums in Tatarstan, and others still stored, race-ready, waiting for a return that nobody can promise, remain physical proof that reliability and an almost stubborn refusal to abandon a broken machine in the middle of nowhere can outlast rivals with far bigger budgets and far flashier engineering. Behind every legend of the dunes, there is a story of people few outside the sport ever hear about. And in KAMAZ Masters' case, that story is still being written, somewhere between a dune in Saudi Arabia the team cannot currently reach, and a factory floor in Tatarstan, where the next generation of drivers is already training for a race they do not yet know if they will be allowed to enter. The truck that once survived a minefield corridor, a botched transmission, and 30 years of rivals with deeper pockets may yet prove, in the end, that its hardest stage was never a dune at all. Whether KAMAZ Master ever returns to the Dakar or remains a legend of a different era, its story is a reminder that in motorsport, the greatest battles are not always fought on the track. Sometimes, history itself becomes the toughest obstacle to overcome. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most remarkable teams in Dakar history, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Dakars for more documentaries uncovering the incredible stories, engineering, and legends behind the world's toughest rally. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.